Wheel of Death. This is a crazy card. We got a lot to talk about with this one. We've also got another legendary in this video, not just one card this time around, but this one's crazy. So let's talk about it first. New legendary shadow spell for Warlock. It's 8 mana. It reads destroy your deck, and then in 5 turns destroy the enemy hero. So an alternate win condition card. We don't really see these too often in Hearthstone. Ever really only been a handful throughout the history of the game, but this one's crazy for 2 reasons. You know, number one, alternate win condition card. Can you win in 5 turns? That's going to be really fun to figure out. Number 2, destroy your deck has some real implications with Sludge Warlock, which has been up until now a really good deck in this most recent Hearthstone meta. Now, we just had some nerfs hit, and we're still kind of figuring out where Sludge Warlock lands. It's definitely going to be notably weaker based on the pretty significant nerfs it got. But would a card like Wheel of Death come in and potentially give it another big universal way to destroy their deck, launch all of those barrels of sludge at the opponent? That's a possibility for this, you know? I guess I should show a barrel of sludge real quick in case some of you haven't been in the game much. Here's your barrel of sludge. When this is played, discarded, or destroyed, deal 4 damage to the lowest health enemy. I know many of you will know that, but just in case you didn't. So, of course, if you got a bunch of these in your deck, much like we see with other cards, we've got Chaos Creation that's destroying cards at the bottom of your deck. Wheel of Death's just going to destroy the whole deck, which means all of those barrel sludges are guaranteed to get destroyed, launching that 4 damage at the opponent's board, sometimes at the opponent's face, in order to kill them. So this could be kind of a backup win condition if the barrels somehow don't get the job done. You initiate this race condition where the opponent has 5 turns to kill you, or they're just going to blow up. Or, you know, maybe it just does the job right off the bat with the barrels of sludge. I haven't played that deck much, so it's hard for me to say if this would be kind of overkill. Like, does the Chaos Creation just do the job? You know, that bundles an extra 6 damage with it. If you don't need the kind of universality of an entire deck getting destroyed, this could be sort of overkill or unnecessary. And of course, if that package ends up kind of falling apart a little bit, particularly in a new meta, in a new expansion, sometimes it can be hard for older decks to keep up, then that wouldn't necessarily be an out for Wheel of Death to find success. Now, that said, I think this is actually still just kind of interesting on its own. You know, there are ways for Warlock to take advantage of a destroyed deck and hedge against a destroyed deck. For instance, we've got Phantom, Lord of the Opera, which, if you play Wheel of Death, this instantly becomes a 0-cost card, which means you got a 0 mana 15/15 with Taunt and Lifesteal. That's not bad, even if you spend 8 mana on your Wheel of Death. This can be an instant way to hedge, protect yourself a little bit. There are even things you can use like the location to copy these stats on board immediately if you set that up preemptively. So you can still have a pretty big, crazy turn potentially off Wheel of Death as long as Phantom's in hand. And then, of course, you got stuff like Symphony of Sins to shuffle things back into your deck so you're not necessarily battling that fatigue problem alongside the battle of dwindling resources and your opponent, of course, trying to kill you as well, which can often be a problem over the course of 5 turns post turn 8. If there are any ways to cheat cards into play sooner, this could become a threat even faster. So, you know, there are some angles there. 8 mana is still expensive. You kind of probably need that Phantom to create a moment of reprieve to play this safely. Otherwise, if you spend 8 on this, the opponent's probably going to kill you because you just sacrificed too much tempo. That late into the game, that's such a big loss of an entire turn. So there are some deck construction challenges, but there are at least ways to overcome the typical challenges. In a lot of classes, I would just say, oh, 8 mana is obviously too much, but in some ways this feels like a culmination of all these setup cards that Blizzard has been printing for this kind of empty deck game plan. And if this becomes the big payoff for all of that critical mass of cards, could actually be kind of nuts and kind of scary. So moving on to our next legendary, it's the return of JEPETTO. This is the Joymancer JEPETTO. 8 mana, 6/6 battlecry. Get copies of every 1 attack or 1 health minion that you've played this game. And this is pretty clearly a synergy piece for the miniaturize keyword, where you're getting those 1/1 copies of your miniaturized cards. JEPETTO gives you an ability to generate a bunch of stuff. You put 4 or 5 of those in your deck, JEPETTO could basically be a full hand of extra mini cards, and looking at those so far, certainly the mini side of them felt very efficient on average, like some nice effects basically baked into those minis. So although, you know, might be hard to spend 8 mana on a 6/6, if you did play this with like 9 or 10 mana, the ability to weave in a mini or two might really help you shore up some of the tempo downside basically on this Geppetto, spending so much on so little board impact. That might relieve some of that pressure of the immediacy needed to react or recover a bit on board, which helps, because otherwise this is probably pretty darn expensive to play. So a deck running a sufficient number of minis and a, you know, sufficiently late enough game plan that they can afford to weave in 8-drops like this, so Reno deck sort of thing come to mind. Man, Geppetto is a really nice value piece. Could maybe even be like some combo setups or something where you're getting at this set of minis all at once. We looked like spell damage minis and so on. So stuff to keep in mind there for the Joymancer Geppetto. Now on top of that, it's not just minis, right? There are actually some other really interesting minions I was looking at, and I did not by any means look at all of them, but just a few I spotted really quickly. Like the hero power stuff for Druid. The free spirit is 1 attack, and the other one is 1 health. So these could be like, you know, play these, kill them off. More ways to like get extra copies of these and just start slamming crazy hero powers on Druid. That actually sounds super fun. There's like Amatis. What, an extra Titan? This is 1 attack, right? So you get an extra Titan off your Amatis. And then there's like Astral Automatons, right? These are 1 attack. So just 3 examples, and again, not by any means conclusive of all the crazy stuff. There's probably a million more great examples, but just like build around super key sorts of things are actually in this pool. It's not just little junk, little tokens, or even good mini cards. There's potential beyond that for Geppetto to make you lots of really cool things. Now, for a lot of those, you know, for instance, an Astral Automaton deck, can you really afford to get to 8 mana and play a Joymancer Geppetto for just more automatons? Probably not, right? That doesn't actually feel very good. Those decks typically want to win faster, kind of get those big automatons out early before board clears and such come into fashion. So, you know, you can probably exclude some of those potential synergies just based on the cost and low board impact of Geppetto, but there might be others that still make sense, you know. Late enough, control enough game plans could fit this in, and you know, a control paladin getting extra copies of Amatis, a free Titan or whatever off this, hey, that's a nice bonus on top of some mini stuff too. That could be a great reason to run this card. Hey, speaking of mini cards here, we've got the Sweetened Snow Flurry, a new 3 mana 3/3 miniaturized elemental. With Battlecry, get 2 random temporary frost spells. And then the mini version of this, of course, 1 mana 1/1. Battlecry again, get 2 random temporary frost spells. So, man, this is like a real curve filling sort of card, it feels like. And kind of a Hail Mary sort of card as well. This actually does quite a bit for a neutral card. I still think it's probably too low synergy to really make it into most decks. I mean, decks are just so hyper-focused these days, and they really have to have such well-defined game plans that this doesn't likely make the cut. But it's more promising than most neutrals, I'll say, because something like a Reno deck even could just use this to fill an entire turn, right? Like, take a roll on the first half. Do you get some good frost spells? Do you find a blizzard? Do you find a frostbolt? Whatever. Those examples might not even be in core anymore. I don't know, but you get the idea. Do you find what you need? No. Okay, well, I take a roll on the second Snow Flurry, right? Get, again, 2 more rolls. Maybe, you know, 1 good card from each. I kind of weave together. I've built my own turn, essentially. I could fill easily 10 mana probably off this singular play. And that's sort of nice. It feels, you know, crazy good in something like Arena, as always, just being able to fill a curve that nicely off 1 card. But even a Reno deck just looking for something in a pinch, you know, maybe some Thief Rogue stuff, any reason you have to get, you know, bonus generated spells like this. There are a few different ways to slice this that give it an advantage over most neutral cards. So I write off most neutral cards these days, but this one's kind of intriguing. Wheel of Death is a 4-star card. Joymancer Geppetto is a 3-star card. Sweetened Snow Flurry is a 3-star card. And there you go, folks. Actually, some multiple card reviews. That's nice. What do you think of Wheel of Death? Is this crazy scary? Is it only good in barrels of sludge? Can it be a win condition elsewhere? I want to hear about your thoughts, man. I don't know. Sludge Warlock just seems like it lines up so nicely with this, but at the same time, it might not be necessary. The deck's just so good. I'm curious if you're a Sludge Warlock enjoyer, if you play that deck a lot, Does it feel like this would be unnecessary? Do you feel like you just get there faster or more reliably through other means, and this would just be overkill? That is an insight I'd love to hear. That said, thanks much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.